Welcome back to Dark Horror Stories. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true disturbing stories from motels across California. These are tales of people who checked into what seemed like ordinary roadside stops and found something waiting in the shadows that was never meant to be seen. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Story 1. The Seaview Motor Lodge sat about 40 miles north of Santa Barbara, right where Highway 1 curves away from the coastline and heads inland through these rolling brown hills. I stayed there in late September, 3 years ago now, during what was supposed to be a solo trip to clear my head after my engagement fell apart. The motel had maybe 12 units arranged in an L shape around a cracked parking lot, and the office smelled like cigarettes and that specific kind of air freshener that's supposed to smell like ocean breeze, but really just smells like chemicals trying very hard. The woman at the desk was probably in her 70s, with deep lines around her mouth and these pale gray eyes that didn't quite focus on my face when she handed me the key. An actual metal key, not a card. Room 7. She told me checkout was at 11 and that I shouldn't leave my window open at night because things blow in from the hills. I assumed she meant dust or maybe coyotes, so I just nodded and took my duffel bag to the room. The room itself was exactly what you'd expect from a $40 a night place. Thin carpet that might have been blue once, floral bedspread that felt scratchy even through my jeans when I sat down, and a painting of a lighthouse bolted to the wall above the bed. The bathroom had pink tile and a shower head that dripped constantly. I didn't care. I wasn't there for luxury. I just needed somewhere quiet to sleep where my phone wouldn't ring every 20 minutes with my ex asking if we could talk through things one more time. I walked down to the beach around sunset, which was maybe a 15-minute hike through dry grass and over this steep little bluff. The water was that dark greenish-gray color it gets in the evening, and there were no other people anywhere. Just me and the sound of waves hitting rocks. I stayed until it was almost dark, then climbed back up to the motel feeling more settled than I had in weeks. Back in the room, I showered, changed into sweats, and lay on the bed with my book. The lamp between the beds flickered occasionally, and I could hear a television through the wall to my left, some game show with canned laughter. Around 10:30, I turned off the light and tried to sleep. That's when I heard the knocking. Not on my door, on the window. 3 slow, deliberate knocks like knuckles rapping against the glass. I lay there in the dark, telling myself it was a branch, except there weren't any trees near the building. I'd noticed that when I parked, just the cracked asphalt and beyond that open hillside. I tried to tell myself it was the wind, even though the air had been completely still when I came back from the beach. The knocking came again, 3 more times. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up and looked toward the window. The curtains were drawn, heavy green fabric that didn't quite meet in the middle, leaving a gap about 2 inches wide. I couldn't see anything through it except darkness. Then I heard the voice. Rachel, my name, spoken in a whisper just loud enough to carry through the glass. Rachel, let me in. My mouth went completely dry. It sounded like my mother. Not similar to her, not someone who could pass for her on the phone. It was her voice, the exact pitch and cadence, the way she always said my name with a little upturn at the end like it was a question. My mother had been dead for 4 years. I sat frozen on the bed, every muscle in my body locked tight. The voice came again, still whispering but more insistent now. Rachel, I'm so cold out here. Please let me in. Part of me wanted to get up, to throw back the curtains and see what was actually out there. To prove to myself it was just someone playing a sick joke or my exhausted brain manufacturing sounds out of nothing. But a deeper, older part of me knew that opening those curtains would be the worst mistake I could make. The knocking started again, but this time it didn't stop. It went on, a steady rhythm against the glass, and underneath it I could hear that voice, my mother's voice, saying my name over and over. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. Each repetition sounded a little less like her and a little more like something trying very hard to remember how a human voice worked. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and almost called the front desk, but then I realized I didn't know the number and I wasn't about to start Googling for it while that thing kept knocking. Instead, I turned on the bedside lamp, and the moment the light clicked on, everything stopped. Total silence. I waited, breathing hard, staring at the curtains. Nothing moved. No sound came from outside. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat propped against the headboard with the lamp on, watching that gap in the curtains, waiting for something to appear there. Nothing did. When the sky started getting light around 6, I packed my bag, left the key on the dresser, and walked out to my car without checking out properly. The weird thing, the thing I didn't notice until I was already 10 miles down the highway, was that the window to my room was intact. No cracks, no scratches, nothing. But when I looked at my phone later that afternoon, I found a voicemail I didn't remember receiving. It had come in at 3:47 a.m. while I was sitting awake in that room. The timestamp was right there. I still haven't listened to it. The preview text just says, "Rachel, why didn't you let me in?" Story 2. My cousin Tyler and I stopped at the Desert Rose Inn outside of Barstow on our way to Vegas. This was last April, and we'd been driving since noon from San Diego, both of us too cheap to spring for a decent hotel when we were just going to sleep for 6 hours and keep going. The place advertised vacancy in red neon and had a cactus painted on the office window that was half flaked off. The guy who checked us in barely looked at us, just took Tyler's credit card and handed over a key to room 14. He had a radio playing behind the counter, some classic rock station, and he was eating sunflower seeds and spitting the shells into a styrofoam cup. The room was at the far end of the building, last one before the parking lot gave way to empty desert scrub. Inside, it smelled like old cigarettes masked with pine cleaner, and the air conditioning unit under the window rattled like it was full of loose screws. We didn't care. We grabbed burgers from the Carl's Jr. Across the street, ate them while watching some action movie on cable, and crashed around midnight. I woke up maybe 2 hours later needing to piss. Tyler was snoring in the other bed, and the room was dark except for the faint glow of the alarm clock between us showing 2:17. I got up, stumbled to the bathroom, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps outside, right outside our door. They weren't walking past, they were pacing. Back and forth, maybe 6 steps in each direction, then turning and repeating. The footfalls were heavy, like boots on concrete, and they had this weird uneven rhythm, like whoever had a limp or was dragging one foot. I finished up quickly and came back into the room listening. The pacing continued. Back and forth, back and forth. "Tyler," I whispered. He didn't move. I said his name louder, and he finally stirred, groggy and annoyed. "What?" "Someone's outside the door." He lifted his head, listening. The footsteps kept going, perfectly regular now, like a metronome. "Probably just someone going to their room," he muttered, but he didn't sound convinced. For 10 minutes straight. That got him to sit up. We both listened to the pacing continue. Then Tyler grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight app, which seemed stupid to me at the time, but I guess he just needed to do something. He walked to the door and looked through the peephole. I watched his shoulders go stiff. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, eye pressed to the peephole, not moving. Then he stepped back slowly and looked at me, and his face had gone pale even in the dim light. "There's nobody out there," he said quietly. "What do you mean? I can hear them." "I mean there's nobody there. The footsteps are happening, but there's nothing making them." I thought he was messing with me. I walked over and looked through the peephole myself. The walkway outside was empty, lit by a single yellow bulb that cast harsh shadows. I could see the parking lot beyond, our rental car sitting alone under a streetlight, but the footsteps were still going, clear as anything, right outside our door. And then they stopped. Complete silence. Tyler and I looked at each other. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. Then we both heard it at the same time. A low scraping sound like fingernails dragging across the door. Slow and deliberate, starting at the top and moving downward all the way to the bottom. Then silence again. "Fuck this," Tyler said. He grabbed his keys and his wallet off the dresser. "We're leaving." I didn't argue. We threw our stuff in our bags in about 30 seconds, and Tyler put his hand on the door handle. He paused. "What if it's still out there?" I asked. "Then we run to the car." He turned the handle and pulled the door open fast. The walkway was empty. No one there, nothing moving. But the air that came in was freezing, way too cold for the desert in April, and it smelled wrong. Not like creosote or dust. It smelled like something had been rotting in the sun, and then someone poured bleach over it. We ran to the car, threw our bags in the back, and Tyler peeled out of the parking lot so fast the tires squealed. Neither of us said much for the next hour while we drove north on the 15, windows down despite the cold, because neither of us could stand the smell that seemed to have followed us into the car. We didn't stop again until we reached Vegas, and when we got there, Tyler parked under the brightest lights he could find, and we both just sat there for a while, breathing. Later, maybe a week after we got back, Tyler told me he looked up the Desert Rose Inn online, found an old news article from 2003. A man had died in room 14. Heart attacks, supposedly, but he'd been alone and no one found him for 3 days. The article mentioned that he'd been wearing work boots and had some kind of leg injury that made him walk with a limp. Neither of us has driven through Barstow since. Story 3. I inherited the Canyon View Motor Court from my Uncle Walter when he passed in 2019. It's way up in the Sierra foothills near Oakhurst, about halfway between Fresno and Yosemite, and it hadn't been properly maintained in probably 20 years. Walter had let it run down after my aunt died, and by the time it came to me, only about 3 of the 8 rooms were in any shape to rent out. I'm not sure why I didn't just sell it. Probably because the real estate agent I talked to laughed when I asked what it might be worth. So instead, I decided to spend the summer fixing it up myself, thinking maybe I could at least get it functional enough to make a little seasonal income off tourists heading to the park. I moved into the manager's unit behind the office in early June. The place was stuffy and full of Walter's old things. Stacks of hunting magazines, a stuffed deer head on the wall, boxes of receipts and ledgers going back to the 70s. I spent the first few days just cleaning and making the space livable. The motel itself was shaped like a horseshoe, with the office at the center and rooms extending to either side. Most of them needed serious work: water damage, holes in the walls, fixtures that hadn't worked in years. But room 3, for some reason, was in perfect condition. Clean, fresh paint, working bathroom, everything intact. I thought maybe Walter had kept it nice for himself or rented it out recently. But when I checked the ledger, there was no record of anyone staying there for at least 5 years. I decided to stay out of it. Something about the room made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't articulate why. Maybe it was just the contrast, everything else falling apart while this one room stayed pristine. I worked on room 5 for most of the first week, replacing the toilet and patching drywall. In the evenings, I'd sit on the little concrete patio behind my unit and drink beer while watching the sun set over the hills. It was quiet up there, almost no traffic on the access road, just wind through the pines and sometimes coyotes yipping in the distance. On the 8th night, I woke up around 3 in the morning because I heard a door closing. Not slamming, just the soft click of a latch catching. I lay there trying to figure out if I dreamed it, but then I heard footsteps on the concrete walkway outside. Slow, steady footsteps, like someone walking from one end of the horseshoe to the other. I got up and looked out my window. The walkway was empty. The footsteps kept going, and I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that they were coming from room 3. I pulled on jeans and grabbed the mag light I kept by the bed, then walked around to the front of the motel. The door to room 3 was closed, just like I'd left it. No cars in the parking lot except my truck. No signs of anyone. But I could hear movement inside the room, not footsteps anymore, something else. A low, rhythmic sound like someone pacing back and forth very quickly, their feet shuffling against the carpet. Then it stopped and I heard the bathroom faucet turn on, water running, then off again. I should have walked away. Should have gone back to my unit and dealt with it in the morning. But I had the master key in my pocket, and some stupid part of me needed to know what was in there. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The room was dark, but I could see well enough with the flashlight. The bed was made neat and perfect. The bathroom door was open, and I could see the sink and mirror from where I stood. Everything looked exactly like it should, except the mirror was fogged up like someone had just taken a hot shower. I stepped inside, sweeping the flashlight around. Nothing, no one. The room was empty. I walked to the bathroom and touched the mirror. It was cold. The fog wasn't from steam. It was on the inside of the glass, somehow condensation that couldn't have been there under normal circumstances. And in the fog, someone had drawn something, not words, just a simple shape, an oval with 2 marks for eyes and a curved line underneath. A crude face drawn with a finger in the impossible moisture on the inside of the mirror. I backed out of the room fast, locked the door, and didn't go near it again for 3 days. When I finally worked up the nerve to check on it, the mirror was clear. No fog, no drawing. But when I opened the bathroom cabinet to check the plumbing, I found something tucked behind the pipes. A Polaroid photo, old and faded, showing the motel from the outside. There was someone standing in front of room 3, but their face was scratched out, just a white blur where their features should have been. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, someone had written, "Don't let her in. I sold the property 2 months later at a loss. Never spent another night there." Story 4. The Palms Motel in Needles was the kind of place you only stayed at if your car broke down or you were too tired to make it to the next town. I ended up there on a Tuesday in August, driving back from visiting my dad in Phoenix, and my radiator started smoking about 10 miles outside of town. I limped the car into a mechanic shop that told me they couldn't get the part until Thursday, so I was stuck. The motel was 2 blocks away, walking distance, and the guy at the shop said it was cheap. He wasn't wrong. $35 a night, cash only, and the office had bars on the windows and a sign that said no refunds in peeling letters. The clerk was a young guy, maybe early 20s, with a neck tattoo and gauges in his ears. He handed me a key to room 11 and told me the ice machine was broken and not to drink the tap water. Great. Room 11 was on the 2nd floor, accessible by an exterior staircase that creaked under my weight. The room itself was about what I expected. Brown carpet, sagging double bed, a TV that got maybe 4 channels if you held the antenna just right. The air conditioner worked, though, which was all I really cared about given that it was 112 degrees outside. I dropped my bag, took a lukewarm shower, and lay on the bed in my towel trying to decide if I wanted to walk somewhere for food. I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes again, the room was darker and the clock said 8:43. That's when I noticed the door to the adjoining room. I hadn't seen it before, or maybe I just hadn't paid attention. It was between the bathroom and the closet, painted the same beige color as the walls, with a deadbolt and a chain lock on my side. I assumed the room next door had the same setup, and if both locks were engaged, neither side could get through. I got dressed and walked down the street to a taco place, ate quickly. and came back as the sun was fully setting. The motel looked even worse in the dusk, the palm trees out front casting long spindly shadows across the parking lot. I locked my door, latched the chain, and settled in to watch whatever was on TV. Around 11, I turned off the lights and tried to sleep despite the heat and the occasional sound of traffic from the street. Maybe an hour later, I heard the deadbolt on the adjoining door slide open from the other side. I sat up fast, staring at the door in the darkness. The deadbolt on my side was still engaged and the chain was latched. But I definitely heard the lock on the other side move, metal scraping against metal. Then I heard the doorknob turn. The door didn't open, it couldn't, not with my side locked, but I watched the handle rotate slowly, a full turn, then stop, a pause, then it turned the other direction like someone was testing it, trying to figure out if it would give. "Rooms occupied," I called out, trying to sound confident. The handle stopped moving. Silence. Then, very quietly, I heard a voice from the other side. A woman's voice, thin and strained. "Can you help me?" I didn't answer. Every instinct in my body told me not to respond. "Please," the voice continued. "I'm locked in. I can't get out. Can you open the door?" "Call the front desk," I said. "There's no phone in here." Her voice was closer now, like she was pressed right up against the door. "Please, I've been in here for so long. Just unlock your side, please." My hands were shaking. I got out of bed and backed away from the door, grabbing my phone off the nightstand. "I'm going to call the front desk for you." "No," the voice became sharp, desperate. "No, don't call them. Just open the door. I need you to open the door." I dialed the front desk. It rang 6 times before the clerk answered, sounding annoyed. "Yeah, this is room 11. Someone's in the room next to me. They're trying to get through the adjoining door." A long pause. Then, "There's nobody in room 12. It's not rented." "Well, someone's in there." "That's not possible. Room 12 is locked, has been for weeks." I looked at the door. The handle started turning again, faster this time, jiggling violently like someone was yanking on it from the other side. "Someone's definitely in there," I said. The clerk sighed. "I'll come check it out." He hung up. I stood there in the dark, watching the handle continue to twist and jerk. The voice came again, but it didn't sound human anymore. It was too high, too thin, like something imitating the memory of a woman's voice but getting the pitch wrong. "Open the door, open the door, open the door." 3 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the walkway outside and then a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw the clerk standing there with a flashlight. I opened the door. "Show me," he said. We both went to the adjoining door. It was completely still now, the handle in its normal position. No sounds from the other side. The clerk pulled out a ring of keys and gestured for me to step back. He unlocked the deadbolt on my side, unlatched the chain, and pushed the door open. The room beyond was dark and empty. I could see another bed, another bathroom, the same depressing setup as my room. The clerk shone his flashlight around. Nothing, no one. He walked through to the main door of room 12 and checked it, still locked from the outside, chain latched. "Nobody's been in here," he said. He looked at me like I was wasting his time. I wanted to argue, to tell him what I'd heard, but the look on his face made it clear he wouldn't believe me. He locked the adjoining door from his side, came back through to my room, and left without another word. I pushed the small dresser in front of the adjoining door and sat on the bed with the lights on for the rest of the night. In the morning, when I went to check out early and find a different place to stay, the clerk wasn't there. Different person at the desk, an older woman with reading glasses. I told her I'd been in room 11 and wanted to leave a day early. She looked at me strangely. "Room 11? We don't have a room 11. Goes from 10 to 12. I still had the key in my pocket. I pulled it out and showed her. The number stamped on the key ring was 12. I'd been in room 12 the whole time. Story 5. The Redwood Rest up near Crescent City was supposed to be charming in an old-fashioned way. My girlfriend Vanessa and I booked it for a long weekend, wanting to disconnect and spend some time in the actual forest instead of just looking at pictures of it on our phones. The photos online showed a rustic motor lodge tucked into the trees, with knotty pine walls and a wood-burning stove in each unit. What we found when we arrived in late October was a place that looked like it hadn't been updated since maybe 1975. The office had wood paneling and a bare rug on the wall, and the woman who checked us in was so old I genuinely worried she might not make it through our conversation. She gave us the key to Unit 4 and told us breakfast started at 8, then shuffled into a back room before we could ask any questions. Unit 4 was actually nice, in a rustic sort of way. Small but clean, with a queen bed covered in a quilt that looked handmade and a little stone fireplace in the corner. The bathroom was tiny, but the shower worked and the hot water was actually hot. We dumped our bags and drove into town for dinner, then came back and built a fire, feeling pretty good about the choice. We woke up the next morning to heavy fog. The kind of fog you get near the coast where you can't see more than 20 feet in any direction, everything muffled and gray. We ate breakfast in the main lodge, coffee and rubbery eggs served by the same ancient woman who'd checked us in, and then decided to hike one of the nearby trails despite the weather. We got back around 4, damp and tired, and crashed in the room for a nap. When I woke up, it was dark outside and Vanessa was still asleep. I checked my phone, 11:47. We slept for 7 hours straight. I got up to use the bathroom and noticed the fog had gotten worse. I could see it through the window, pressing against the glass like something solid. The streetlight in the parking lot was barely visible, just a faint yellow smudge. That's when I heard the child laughing. It was coming from outside, somewhere close to our unit. High and clear, the unmistakable sound of a kid laughing, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Then I heard running footsteps on the gravel and more laughter, like they were playing tag or chase. I looked out the window but couldn't see anyone through the fog. The laughter continued, circling around the building. Then it stopped abruptly, and I heard a small voice say, "Come play with us." Vanessa stirred on the bed. "What's going on?" "There's kids outside," I said quietly. She sat up, groggy and confused. What time is it?" "Almost midnight." We both listened. The voice came again, but from a different direction now, like whoever it was had moved to the other side of the unit. "Come outside and play." Vanessa got up and came to the window. "Who brings kids to a place like this?" I didn't have an answer. The laughter started again, but it sounded wrong now. Too high, too fast, like it was sped up slightly. And underneath it I could hear something else, a low, rhythmic tapping like fingernails on glass. "Are they at our window?" Vanessa whispered. The tapping grew louder. It was at our window, multiple points of contact, like several small hands pressing against the glass, but the fog was so thick we couldn't see anything, just vague shapes moving in the gray. "Come out and play," the voice said again, right up against the window now. "We've been waiting for you." I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight app, pointing it at the window. The light barely penetrated the fog, but for just a second I saw something, a handprint on the glass. Small, child-sized, but the fingers were too long, stretching at least 8 inches from palm to tip, and there were too many of them. 6 or 7 fingers splayed across the window, each ending in something dark and pointed. Vanessa made a sound in her throat, something between a gasp and a whimper. The handprint slid down the glass slowly, leaving a smear behind, then vanished into the fog. The laughter started again, but now it was coming from all directions at once, from the window, from the door, from above us, like something was on the roof. Multiple voices, all children, all laughing in that too fast, wrong-pitched way. I ran to the door and checked the lock. Deadbolt engaged, chain latched. The door handle started to turn anyway, jiggling hard like someone was trying to force it. "What do we do?" Vanessa asked. She was standing in the middle of the room, arms wrapped around herself. "We wait," I said, because I genuinely had no other answer. We couldn't go outside, and calling the front desk seemed useless. What would we even say? The laughter and tapping continued for another 20 minutes, moving around the unit, sometimes loud and insistent, sometimes fading to barely audible. Then all at once it stopped. Total silence. We waited. Nothing. No sounds from outside except the distant hum of the highway. I finally worked up the nerve to look out the window again. The fog was still thick, but I couldn't see any shapes moving in it anymore. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, just sat on the bed with all the lights on, waiting for sunrise. In the morning, the fog had lifted. We packed our stuff and went to check out early. The old woman at the desk seemed unsurprised. "Unit 4, she asked when I handed her the key. "Yeah, we need to leave." She nodded slowly. "Heard them, did you?" I stared at her. "You know about this? Been happening on and off for 30 years. Nobody stays in Unit 4 more than one night anymore." She slid my credit card back across the desk without charging us for the second night. "Drive safe." Before we left, I walked around to look at the window to our unit in the daylight. The glass was covered in handprints, dozens of them, all with those impossibly long fingers. They were everywhere, on the window, on the door, on the walls, and in the gravel beneath the window there were footprints. They weren't shaped like human feet. Story 6. The Sunset Motor in outside Modesto was where I ended up after the worst job interview of my life. I'd driven 3 hours for a position that turned out to be a bait-and-switch scheme, basically a pyramid marketing thing disguised as a salary job, and by the time I realized it and walked out, I was too exhausted and angry to drive all the way home. The motel was right off Highway 99, one of those long single-story buildings with parking spots directly in front of each room. The sign out front advertised color TV and free local calls, which should have told me something about how long it had been since anyone updated the place. I checked in around 7, grabbed fast food from a drive-thru, and holed up in room 18 to eat and decompress. The room smelled like must and old carpet, and the bedspread had cigarette burns, even though there was a big no smoking sign on the door. I didn't care. I just wanted to eat my burger, watch something mindless on TV, and pass out. Around 9, I heard shouting from the room next door. A man's voice, angry and loud, though I couldn't make out the words. Then a woman's voice responding, equally angry. A domestic argument, the kind that makes you uncomfortable because you're close enough to hear it, but there's nothing you can really do. It went on for maybe 10 minutes, escalating and then dying down, then escalating again. I turned up the TV to drown it out. Then I heard a crash, like something heavy being thrown against the wall between our rooms, then silence. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing, no more voices, no movement. I told myself it was fine, they'd probably just tired themselves out. People fought, it happened, but something about the silence felt wrong. I got up and pressed my ear against the wall, listening hard. I could hear something on the other side, but it wasn't talking or crying or any of the sounds you'd expect after a fight. It was a wet, sliding sound, like something being dragged across the floor. And underneath that, a low, rhythmic breathing, too deep and slow to be normal. I stepped back from the wall, my skin prickling. Then I heard the door to the room next to mine open and close, footsteps on the concrete walkway moving away. I went to my window and peeked through the curtain. A man was walking toward the parking lot, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket. He got into a pickup truck and drove away. I should have felt relieved. Problem solved, people left, I could go back to my burger and TV. But the wet sliding sound was still happening on the other side of the wall. I could hear it clearly now, rhythmic and deliberate, like something heavy being pulled back and forth across the carpet. I called the front desk. No answer. I tried again, still nothing. I stood there debating what to do. Call the police and tell them what? I heard a fight and now there's a weird noise. They'd show up, knock on the door, find nothing, and I'd look like an idiot. But the sound kept going, back and forth, back and forth. I finally grabbed my room key and walked outside. The door to room 19 was closed, the curtains drawn. I stood in front of it for a long moment, trying to decide if I should knock. Before I could, the sound stopped. Complete silence again. I put my ear close to the door. Nothing, not even breathing or the sound of a TV. Just total oppressive quiet. I knocked anyway. Hello, everything okay in there? No response. I knocked harder. Hello. The door opened, not all the way, just a crack, maybe 3 inches, but there was no one standing there. The door had just swung open on its own, or someone had opened it and stepped back out of sight. I could see a slice of the room through the gap. The lights were off, but the bathroom light was on, casting a pale glow. I could see the edge of the bed and part of the carpet. There was something dark on the carpet. Something wet smeared across the floor in a long streak that disappeared toward the bathroom. Hello, I said again, quieter this time. The door swung open wider, very slowly, until it was fully open. The room was empty. No people, no movement, just that dark smear on the carpet leading to the bathroom. And then I heard it. From inside the bathroom, the sound of someone whispering. Not words, just a constant low hiss, like air escaping from something. And underneath it, that wet sliding sound again, faster now, agitated. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run. I backed away from the door, turned and walked very quickly back to my room. I locked the door, latched the chain, and pushed the dresser in front of it. The whispering started up on the other side of the wall, continuous, unintelligible, rising and falling in pitch. It went on for hours. I sat on the bed with my phone in my hand, ready to call 911 if anything tried to come through the door, but nothing did. Sometime after 3 in the morning, it finally stopped. I left at first light, didn't bother checking out, just threw my stuff in the car and drove away. I made it about 5 miles before I realized something was wrong. There was a smell in my car, faint but distinct, like meat going bad mixed with something chemical. And on the passenger seat, there was a wet stain, roughly the size of a handprint that hadn't been there before. I pulled over and scrubbed at it with napkins from the glove box, but it wouldn't come out. The smell lingered for weeks, no matter how many times I cleaned the car or what air fresheners I used. I never figured out what it was. I never went back to find out. Story 7. My friend Isaiah and I took a road trip down to San Diego the summer after we graduated college. And on the way back, we decided to take the scenic route up the coast instead of just blasting up Interstate 5. We stopped for the night at a place called the Blue Pacific Motor Lodge, somewhere between Oceanside and San Clemente. It was right on the highway, but you could hear the ocean from the parking lot. And for $60 a night, we figured it was a good deal. The woman at the front desk was chatty, probably mid-50s, with dyed red hair and bright pink lipstick. She gave us room 9 and told us there was coffee and donuts in the office starting at 7 if we wanted breakfast. Isaiah grabbed the key and we walked to the room, which was on the ground floor facing the highway. The room was standard motel fare, 2 double beds, a dresser with a TV on it, a tiny bathroom with a shower stall. The walls were painted pale yellow, and there was a painting of a sailboat above one of the beds. We dumped our stuff and walked down to the beach to catch the sunset, then came back and ordered pizza. Around midnight, we were both lying in our respective beds, scrolling through our phones when Isaiah suddenly sat up and said, "Do you smell that?" I sniffed the air. There was a smell, faint but noticeable, something like rotten eggs mixed with seawater. "Yeah," I said, "maybe the plumbing." Maybe. He got up and checked the bathroom, turning on the fan and closing the door, but the smell didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. We opened the window to let in fresh air, and that helped a little, but the smell lingered. After a while, we just tried to ignore it and go to sleep. I woke up sometime later. I don't know what time, but it was still dark because the smell had gotten worse, much worse. It was so strong now that it made my eyes water, and I could taste it in the back of my throat, thick and sulfurous. I sat up and saw Isaiah was awake too, sitting on the edge of his bed with his shirt pulled up over his nose. "Dude, this is unbearable," he said, his voice muffled. "We need to switch rooms or something." I nodded and reached for my phone to call the front desk, but before I could, the lights went out. Not just in our room. I could see through the window that the parking lot lights were out too, and the street lights on the highway. Total darkness. "Power outage," Isaiah said. We sat there in the dark, breathing through our shirts, waiting for the lights to come back on, and that's when I heard the tapping. It was coming from the bathroom. A light, rhythmic tapping like fingernails on tile. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. "You hear that?" I whispered. "Yeah." The tapping continued, steady and deliberate. Then it stopped, and we heard water running in the bathroom sink. Neither of us had turned it on. Isaiah got up and walked slowly to the bathroom door. I could barely see him in the darkness, just his silhouette against the slightly lighter rectangle of the bathroom doorway. He pushed the door open. The water was running full blast. He reached in and turned it off. The smell got worse immediately, so strong now that I started gagging. It wasn't just sulfur anymore, it was decay, rot, something organic and dead. Isaiah backed out of the bathroom fast. "There's something in there." "What?" "I don't know. I saw something move. In the mirror." He closed the bathroom door and we both stood there in the dark, breathing hard. The tapping started again, louder now, more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Then a scraping sound like nails dragging across the inside of the bathroom door. "We're leaving," Isaiah said. He grabbed his keys and wallet off the nightstand. "No, we didn't pack. We just opened the door and ran to the car." The parking lot was still dark, and the air outside was freezing despite the fact that it had been warm when we went to bed. We got in the car and Isaiah turned the key. The engine wouldn't start. He tried again, nothing, not even a click. "You've got to be kidding me," he said, his voice rising. I looked back at the room. The door was still open and I could see something moving inside. Not walking, it was too low to the ground for that. It was crawling, pulling itself across the floor toward the door, toward us. "Try it again," I said, my voice shaking. Isaiah turned the key again. This time the engine caught and he threw the car into reverse and floored it. We peeled out of the parking lot and onto the highway, and I looked back one more time. The thing was in the doorway now. I couldn't see it clearly in the darkness, but I could see its shape. Too tall and too thin, limbs bent at wrong angles, moving in a way that made my brain reject what I was seeing. We drove for an hour before Isaiah finally pulled over at a rest stop. We sat there in silence, windows up, doors locked, until the sun came up. When we got home, Isaiah found something in his jacket pocket that hadn't been there before. A small piece of driftwood, smooth and gray, with something carved into it. A symbol like a stick figure with too many limbs, the same proportions as the thing we'd seen in the doorway. He threw it away, but I know it bothered him. It bothered me too. Still does. Story 8. I was driving down to Los Angeles from Sacramento for a friend's wedding, and I made the mistake of leaving late on a Friday afternoon. Traffic was a nightmare, and by the time I got somewhere around Bakersfield, I was exhausted and ready to stop for the night. I pulled off the highway and found a place called the Golden Palms Motel, one of those Art Deco-looking places from the 40s that had been repainted in bright turquoise and pink. The office smelled like vanilla air freshener, and the clerk was a young woman with dark curly hair who seemed surprised to have a customer. She checked me into room 6, took my credit card, and handed me a physical key on a heavy brass keychain. Room 6 was at the end of the building, right next to the pool, which was empty and filled with dead leaves. The room itself was actually kind of charming in a retro way, pink tile in the bathroom, a round mirror with gold trim, a bedspread with atomic age patterns. I took a shower, ordered Chinese food, and ate it while watching TV in bed. I fell asleep around 11 and slept hard, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep you get when you're truly exhausted. I woke up suddenly in complete darkness. My phone said 3:33. I lay there trying to figure out what had woken me, and then I heard it. Music, very faint, coming from somewhere outside. Big band music, the kind you'd hear in an old movie, with horns and a crooning singer. It sounded like it was coming from the pool area. I got up and went to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see out. The pool was lit up, the underwater lights casting a blue glow across the empty concrete, and there were people there. At least a dozen of them, maybe more, all dressed like they were at a party from the 1940s. Women in evening gowns and pearls, men in suits and fedoras. They were dancing, moving in pairs around the edge of the pool, slow and elegant, like they were in a ballroom instead of standing next to a leaf-filled swimming pool in Bakersfield. I stood there watching, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It had to be some kind of event, right? A themed party or maybe people filming something, but something was wrong with the way they moved. Too smooth, too synchronized, like they were all following the exact same rhythm down to the millisecond. And none of them were talking, just dancing in total silence except for the music, which I realized now was coming from nowhere. No speakers, no band, just somehow present in the air. Then one of the women turned and looked directly at my window. Her face was beautiful and perfectly made up, but her eyes were wrong. Too dark, too empty, like someone had painted pupils onto a mannequin. She smiled, and I saw that her teeth were gray. She raised one gloved hand and beckoned to me. I dropped the curtain and backed away from the window, my heart slamming in my chest. The music got louder, swelling to a crescendo, and I heard footsteps outside my door. Multiple footsteps, moving in perfect unison, coming closer. They stopped right outside my door. I stared at the handle, waiting for it to turn. It didn't, but I could hear breathing on the other side, dozens of people breathing in sync. A collective inhalation and exhalation that sounded more like wind through a cave than human lungs. Then someone knocked, 3 sharp raps perfectly spaced. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. The knock came again. Then a woman's voice, sweet and pleasant. "Won't you come dance with us?" I pressed myself against the far wall, as far from the door as I could get. The voice came again, but it was different now, layered like multiple people speaking at once, their voices not quite matching in pitch or timing. "Come dance with us, come dance with us, come dance with us." It went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 5 minutes. Then finally silence. I waited, nothing, no footsteps walking away, no music, no breathing, just quiet. I didn't move from that spot until the sun came up. When there was enough light to see by, I crept to the window and looked out. The pool was empty. No people, no lights, no sign anyone had been there. Just dead leaves floating in murky water. I packed my bag and left immediately, didn't bother checking out. I drove the rest of the way to LA on pure adrenaline and 3 gas station coffees. 2 days later, after the wedding, I was scrolling through my phone and found something I didn't remember taking. A photo, time-stamped at 3:47 a.m. the night I stayed at the Golden Palms. It was a shot of the pool area taken from my window. There were people in it. Dozens of them dancing in their evening clothes, their faces turned toward the camera, smiling those great-toothed smiles. I deleted the photo, but sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I swear I can still hear that music playing somewhere far away. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments which story unsettled you most, and share this with your friends who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe out there.